Okay, so now we come to a very, 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 very famous story that most people know. Even those who know nothing else about the Bible have heard of this one. This is David versus Goliath. An old favorite. This is one of those big Bible stories that everybody likes, even those who hate the Bible. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soka in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Damim between Soka and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another with a valley between them. I don't know how much longer afterwards this is taking place. A month, a year, 2 years, I don't know. I have no idea. But sometimes, because again, the Bible is, the narrative of the Bible is not often concerned with time. So I don't know how much time passes between the end of chapter 16 and the first verse of 17. I have no idea. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, it could be a decade. I have no clue. I mean, it isn't that long because David still seems to be a young man here. Probably even not really a man. The military, the age of service in the military at this time was 20. And we read earlier about Saul. At the end of chapter 14, it says, whenever Saul saw a mighty or brave man, he took him into his service. So he drafted men into his army. The military age was 20. David does not seem to be a soldier at this point. He's not with the rest of the army. He has to go there separately for another reason. So it would indicate he's not 20 yet. But I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I don't know when he first entered Saul's service. Was he 15, 14, 13, 17, 18, 12, 11, 9? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking he's not 9, okay? I'm thinking he's somewhere in his mid to late teens. But I don't know. The text just doesn't say. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. Now Goliath, of course, is the main one of these giant-type characters. But he has brothers, and there was some kind of a race of giants that were living in that area at that time. And that goes all the way back to the Rephaim of Moses' day. Of course, some people will tell you it was the Nephilim from Genesis 6. But we mentioned that we talked about that way back when we talked about Genesis 6, the flood, that the Nephilim was another concept. But there was some kind of a tribe of people going around in this area that were huge. Possibly because of generations of inbreeding, but who knows, really. And Goliath is one of them, and he actually has several brothers who will also be defeated by David and his men later on in the story. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels, that is, 125 pounds. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels, that is about 15 pounds. His shield bearer went ahead of him. So he's weighted down with some pretty heavy-duty armor. Even a guy as big as he is would get encumbered by this armor in a prolonged fight. So he's probably not looking to engage in a contest of endurance or stamina. He wants to go out there and crush somebody's bones and get over with quickly. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him," which of course he's obviously thinking he will, "and I kill him, you will become our subjects, and you will serve us." That is representative battle, representative combat. 2 soldiers, one from each side, fight each other, and the outcome of that one battle determines the entire war. Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man, and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. They did not want to fight this guy who was 9 feet tall. I'm not sure if I would either. I'm not sure if I would either. Not only would he be huge, he'd have a significant reach advantage. If he's 9 feet tall, it means he has a really long wingspan, plus he has this long javelin. So he can get to you a lot sooner than you can get to him. And he's going to have a lot of impact behind those blows. So he might be able to pierce through your armor and kill you before you can even think about getting in range to hurt him. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse. Remember that Ephrathite thing? We read about that back in at the beginning of 1 Samuel. Elkanah was an Ephrathite. And in Ruth 1 verse 2, they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. Who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons. Now previously we read that he had 7. Here it says he has 8. My guess is that the account in 1 Samuel is trying to signify the concept of perfection and completion. Because in their minds, in their view, in their way of thinking, 7 was the perfect number. So going down to number 7, which is David, indicates that he's the perfect choice. Apparently, Jesse actually had 8 sons total, though. And so maybe one of them had already died, though. It's possible that one of them had already died. And in 1 Samuel 16, the 7 are the ones who are still alive. I'm not sure. At any rate, it appears as though Jesse's total number of sons was actually 8, and not 7. Anyway, Jesse had 8 sons. And in Saul's time, he was old and well advanced in years. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So there's 3 that are at war with Saul. 3 that I don't know where they are. I'm not sure if they're out of the country or if they're all doing something else. It wouldn't seem like they would all be under age 20. If David is number 7, if there are 3 fighting men and then 4 non-fighting men, and then David is the youngest, it wouldn't seem as though they would all 4 of those youngest would be under the age of 20. I don't know. I don't know where those other 3 guys are. But 3 of them are fighting, and David is not. I don't know where the other 3 are, or why they're not fighting. For 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning and evening, and took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, Take this ephah of roasted grain, and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So early in the morning, David left the flock with the shepherd, loaded up, and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. They've been standing off against each other for more than a month now. At some point, you'd think the tensions are going to snap, and they're going to start fighting. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Now, he'd been doing this every day for 40 days. It says right before that David had been going back and forth from the battle lines from Saul to his father. So either David had never been in a position, either this had been going on longer than, I don't know, or David had never been in position to hear Goliath's actual taunts before. My guess is that this is the first time in his various goings back and forth that this is the first time that David had actually heard Goliath's challenge. He apparently just didn't happen to be there at the right time to hear the challenge. At other times he's been going back and forth. Now the Israelites had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage." Women were a common prize in war back in those days. "And will exempt his father's family from taxes." Now that's a prize right there. And not just him. Okay, so if David does this, which he will, it's not just going to be David who is exempt from taxes, it's going to be his father. So all of his brothers and all of his relatives on his father's family will be exempt from taxes. Now we didn't read about Saul setting up a tax system. We know he did, obviously, because he's exempting someone from that tax system here. But Samuel said that he was going to do this. When Samuel was warning the people about the kingship that they're asking for, he tells them that he's going to tax them. In 1 Samuel 8, he talks about that he's going to take your men in for service to him and your women, your daughters too. He will take verse 14, he will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves. He will take a tenth of your grain of your vintage. Okay, he will take a tenth of your flocks. Okay, he's going to tax you. He's going to take your stuff. We haven't read specifically about Saul doing that, but obviously he has done that now. So David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, "This is what we've done for the man who kills him." I think David's going to sign up for this, isn't he? Sounds to me like David's going to step forward and say, "Let me handle this guy." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are, and how wicked your heart is. You came down here only to watch the battle." So Eliab doesn't like David. Eliab is either jealous of him or thinks he's a troublemaker. Kind of makes me think of Jacob and his brothers back in the day where they didn't like Jacob. It seems like Eliab, and possibly all of his older brothers, didn't like David. He thought at least, that David was conceited. "Now what have I done?" said David. Apparently this is a common family dispute. "Can't I even speak?" Now have you ever had, I am a younger brother, I have an older brother, and I have a younger brother too. And I'm telling you, growing up, okay, my younger brother annoyed me all the time. All the time, my younger brother annoyed me. I guess I annoy my older brother too, you have to ask him. But my younger brother annoyed me all the time. I don't think a day went by when I was a kid growing up that I did not want to beat my younger brother up. All right, I just was, just every day I wanted to beat him up every day. I have 3 nephews who are all brothers, and they, one of them is older than the other 2. One of them is 2 years older than the other 2 who are twins. And I pulled them aside a few times and said, "I know younger brothers can be annoying." Every day I wanted to beat up my younger brother when I was growing up. Every day, especially when I was your age, right when your age, 12, 13, 14, in that range. And my younger brother was 3 years younger than me. His are 2 years younger than him. Like every day I wanted to beat up my younger brother. I know what that's like. So if you have a younger brother, if you're Eliab, I wasn't the oldest. But if you're Eliab or Shammah or wherever these guys are, just like with Reuben and Judah and Benjamin Simeon, all them, and you have this annoying younger brother. Yes, there are going to be times when you just get fed up with him. Okay, it's like, I know what that's like. And apparently this was a common family dispute. Apparently Eliab and them, at least Eliab, maybe all of them, maybe some of them, but at least him, had issues with David before. He then turned away to someone else and brought out the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, so he's not going in front of Saul directly himself. He's getting called by Saul to go in front of him. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth. But David said to Saul, so not only is he huge, he's experienced. He is trained in the ways of war. He knows what he's doing. When he's got that javelin, he knows what he's doing with it. He knows how to use it. He knows how to kill you with it. And again, with his incredibly long wingspan and reach, and the force he's going to have behind his blows, he's going to be able to put that javelin where it matters very, very quickly. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. So I think right there we're seeing why David was the one chosen. David didn't speak during that first time we saw him at the consecration scene in chapter 16. He didn't do anything. He was just called and anointed, and we didn't even hear him speak. Even during the section after that, when he's called to be Saul's flute player and armor bearer, he doesn't say anything. And now we're actually hearing David speak, and we're getting insight into his character, and we know why now God chose him to be the king. I don't know how many lions and bears he has killed. If it's been one of each or a number of each, he's probably talking about something that he does somewhat regularly. Okay? I don't think he's boasting or bragging here. I think he's saying very simply that this is something I do pretty often. I'm used to fighting huge, dangerous things that want to kill me. God delivered me from those things, he'll deliver me from this guy. I think he's seeing it as being very simple, very matter of fact, very innocent. I think David is young enough here, somewhere probably in his mid-teens, maybe late teens, to still be pretty innocent about all this. He's not 20 yet. I think we can safely say he's not 20 yet because he's not in military service. And Saul didn't want him to go out there because he's not a military man yet. So the age for that was 20, so he's not 20, but he could be anywhere under that. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. Now, I don't know. It doesn't say that he doesn't. No, remember, Saul is tall. Saul's a big guy. He's the biggest guy out there. It doesn't say here the reason why David couldn't go is because these things were too big for him. It says it's because he's not used to them. He's not used to wearing heavy armor. He's used to wearing a tunic and, chasing after bears and lions in his tunic or whatever. It doesn't say that he's having trouble because they're bigger than he is. So the image that we sometimes get is of some little kid kind of walking around in some grown man's clothes. I don't think that's the case here. I think we're talking probably about a mid to late teenager who's probably, we read about him early on. He was ruddy with a fine appearance and handsome features. Later on says he's a fine-looking man. I think he's a pretty big guy, too. He may not be done growing yet at this point. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he's done growing. I don't know. But it's like, I don't think, David is a pretty straight, he's going to have lots of trouble with women later on. He's going to have no trouble getting female admirers. And actually, it's going to be one of his weaknesses, actually, as we go on. Maybe his major weakness, actually, going on, is that he's just too irresistible to the ladies. So he's a good-looking guy. He's not a shrimp or a weakling or a little kid here. Okay, he's probably a mostly grown late teenager at this point. And he might even be a big guy, because he apparently is wearing Saul's stuff. We know Saul was a big guy, without having difficulty because his clothes are too big for him. It's hard to say that, but that's certainly a conclusion I think that we can draw here. Anyway, so he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth, rounded stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. So someone is answering the challenge. Goliath has been going out every day now for more than a month to issue this challenge, and someone now finally is about to answer it. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He sees this attractive young thing coming towards him, and he's thinking, this guy? This is the guy they're going to send after me? He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. I'm going to kill you and leave your carcass right here on the ground, so that the wild animals and the birds of prey ravage it. This is a classic. And I'm a wrestling fan, okay? I have been watching professional wrestling since I was like 8 years old, 11 years old, 10 years old, somewhere around there. And this is a classic set. You have the mean, ugly, huge bad guy in there against this good-looking, squeaky clean, young good guy. And what drama you can get from that. What heat. They call it the word heat. When the fans get behind it and the emotions in the crowd get excited and they start cheering and booing, that's called heat in wrestling terms. That's a classic setup to draw heat from the crowd. You have the big, mean, ugly bad guy beating up the squeaky clean, baby-faced good guy. That is a surefire way to get the crowd into it. It's a surefire way to get the girls in the crowd into it, because they're going to want to rush in there and stop the mean, ugly bad guy from beating up the cute, young, good guy. It's a good way to get the guys in the crowd into it. I mean, it always works. Wrestling shows have been using this formula for 60 years because it works. And in fact, they even call it the David and Goliath formula. And here we see the prototype matchup of that, huh? David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. So he's going to do that to Goliath. Goliath's not going to do that to David. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, so now the battle will start. The trash talk is over. Time for the fight to start. Ring the bell. We're underway here. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine in the forehead. So I get he had a helmet. They did say earlier that he had a helmet. Chapter verse 5, they said he had a bronze helmet. So either he didn't have it on in this particular battle, didn't think he would need it maybe, or he did and had an empty spot, and maybe it protected the sides of his head but had an empty spot here. Or did, and it just, David flung the stone and it hit so hard it went right through. I don't know. At any rate, whatever presence the helmet may have had, it wasn't enough to deflect this blow from the stone. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, He slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So he seems like he probably would have gotten knocked back first, because the force of the stone crushing into your head would have knocked you back, and then he apparently lunged forward as he fell down. So he would have probably recoiled back somewhat this way, and then probably collapsed going downwards, forward. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. So the sword is what actually struck the killing blow. The stone just knocked him out, or knocked him senseless. He used his own sword to kill him, and then he cut off his head. So he stabbed him with the sword somehow, and then cut off his head with it. Now that goes against what the previous verse had just said about him not having a sword. But you have to remember that's the way these ancient Hebrews wrote. Verse 50 is a summary statement of the battle. He did not have a sword in his hand when the battle began, and he killed him anyway. But as we'll find out in the very next verse, he did use the Philistine's own sword to kill him. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. That's not a contradiction or anything. That's just how they wrote. We have to understand that this is their style of writing, not ours. We might not do it that way. We, as an English, Western culture, might not write it that way, but they did, and that was no problem for them. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout, and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Shiraim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head, this is Goliath's head, and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. Now, Jerusalem is not in Israelite control at this point. David will make it his capital city later, but not now. I don't know. This strikes me as though this is what the text is saying, what David will ultimately do with the Philistines' head later on when he captures Jerusalem and makes it his capital city. That's what it seems like to me. Because at this point in time, the Israelites still do not have Jerusalem, and David would have no reason to bring this trophy there. So my guess is that this verse is inserted here to explain what David ends up doing with Goliath's head later on, after he's officially king of the whole country and Jerusalem is his capital. But I don't really know. Again, the sense of time in these texts is not the most important thing. Okay? To the Hebrew writers putting this together, or to the Hebrew hearers who would have been hearing it read to them out loud by their priests, it really didn't matter if you're taking these different events from different times and kind of smashing them together in the same account. To us, that's confusing and weird, but to them, it's not a big deal. So, my guess is that this is a reference to what David ultimately does with the head at a later point in time, and we're just finding this out now. But I can't say that with complete certainty, but I think that's what it is. Anyway, as Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, O king, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. So he still has it at this point. So this is a recap of what Saul was doing when David went out to fight Goliath. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." Saul, I'm going to admit, I don't know. Chapter 16 has David coming to meet Saul and be his armor bearer, and then Saul sending word to Jesse to let David stay with him. Now Saul seems to have forgotten that. I don't really know exactly how to explain that. My guess is that Saul never met Jesse personally, So he never knew David's father personally. He had said that he was going to offer the family of the father of the man who kills Goliath tax-exempt status in Israel. So my guess is that he's going to do that here. He needs to find out who this guy's father is so that he can clear that father's family of having to pay taxes. It could very well be that Saul just never met Jesse personally. When David came to be in his service, David just was there, and he never met David's dad and sent word to the family without ever going there himself and knowing personally who David's father was. That's probably how it went. But it does seem as though Saul was meeting David for the first time here, when we know from the previous chapter that they had already met. So that is the famous story of David and Goliath. We're not done with this yet, though, because there's some follow-up here in the next chapter that's pretty important, too.